Augie, said Via. Come quick, Mum needs to talk to you. I'm not apologising. This isn't about you, she yelled. Now everything in the world is about you, Augie. Now hurry up. Daisy's sick. Mum's taken her to the emergency vet. Come say goodbye. I pushed the pillows off my face and looked up at her. That's when I saw she was crying. What do you mean goodbye? Come on, she said, holding out her hand. I took her hand and followed her down the hall to the kitchen. Daisy was lying down sideways on the floor, with her legs straight out in front of her. She was panting a lot, like she'd been running in the park. Mum was kneeling beside her, stroking the top of her head. What happened? I asked. She just started whimpering all of a sudden, said Via, kneeling down next to Mum. I looked down at Mum, who was crying too. I'm taking her to the animal hospital downtown, she said. The taxi's coming to pick me up. The vet'll make her better, right? I said. Mum looked at me. I hope so, honey, she said quietly, but I honestly don't know. Of course he will, I said. Daisy's been sick a lot lately, Augie, and she's old. But they can fix her, I said, looking at Via to agree with me, but Via wouldn't look up at me. Mum's lips were trembling. I think it might be time we say goodbye to Daisy, Augie. I'm sorry. No, I said. We don't want her to suffer, Augie, she said. The phone rang. Via picked it up, said, OK, thanks, and then hung up. The taxi's outside, she said, wiping her tears with the backs of her hands. OK, Augie, open the door for me, sweetie, said Mum, picking Daisy up very gently, like she was a huge, droopy baby. Please, no, Mummy, I cried, putting myself in front of the door. Honey, please, said Mum, she's very heavy. What about Daddy? I cried. He's meeting me at the hospital, Mum said. He doesn't want Daisy to suffer, Augie. Via moved me away from the door and held it open for Mum. My cell phone's on if you need anything, Mum said to Via. Can you cover her with the blanket? Via nodded, but she was crying hysterically now. Say goodbye to Daisy, kids, Mum said, tears streaming down her face. I love you, Daisy, Via said, kissing Daisy on the nose. I love you so much. Bye, little girlie, I whispered into Daisy's ear. I love you. Mum carried Daisy down the stoop. The driver had opened the back door and we watched her get in. Just before she closed the door, Mum looked at us standing by the entrance to the building and gave us a little wave. I don't think I've ever seen her look sadder. I love you, Mummy, said Via. I love you, Mummy, I said. I'm sorry, Mummy. Mum blew a kiss to us and closed the door. We watched the car leave and then Via closed the door. She looked at me a second and then she hugged me very, very tight while we both cried a million tears. Justin came over about half an hour later. He gave me a big hug and said, Sorry, Augie. We all sat down in the living room, not saying anything. For some reason, Via and I had taken all the Daisy's toys from around the house and to put them in a little pile on the coffee table. Now we just stared at the pile. She really is the greatest dog in the world, said Via. I know, said Justin, rubbing Via's back. She just started whimpering like all of a sudden, I said. Via nodded. Like 2 seconds after you left the table, she said. Mum was going to go after you, but Daisy just started like whimpering. Like how? I said. Just whimpering, I don't know, said Via. Like howling? I said. Augie, like whimpering, she answered impatiently. She just started moaning like something was really hurting her, and she was panting like crazy. Then she just kind of plopped down. And Mum went over and tried to pick her up, and whatever she was obviously hurting, she bit Mum. What? I said. When Mum tried to touch her stomach, Daisy bit her hand, Via explained. Daisy never bites anybody, I answered. She wasn't herself, said Justin. She was obviously in pain. Daddy was right, said Via. She shouldn't have let her get this bad. What do you mean? I said. He knew she was sick? Augie, Mum's taken her to the vet like 3 times in the last 2 months. She's been throwing up left and right. Haven't you noticed? But I didn't know she was sick. Via didn't say anything. She put her arm around my shoulders and pulled me closer to her. I started to cry again. I'm sorry, Augie, she said softly. I'm really sorry about everything, okay? You forgive me? You know how much I love you, right? I nodded. Somehow that fight didn't matter much now. Was Mummy bleeding? I asked. It was just a nip, said Via, right there. She pointed to the bottom of her thumb to show me exactly where Daisy had bitten Mum. Did it hurt her? Mummy's okay, Augie, she's fine. Mum and Dad came home 2 hours later. We knew the second they opened the door that Daisy wasn't with them, that Daisy was gone. We all sat down in the living room around the pile of Daisy's toys. Dad told us what happened at the animal hospital, how the vet took Daisy for some x-rays and blood tests, then came back and told them she had a huge mass in her stomach. She was having trouble breathing. Mum and Dad didn't want her to suffer, so Daddy picked her up in his arms like he always liked to do, and with her legs straight up in the air, and he and Mum kissed her goodbye over and over again, and whispered to her while the vet put a needle into her leg. And then, after about a minute, she died in Daddy's arms. It was so peaceful, Daddy said. She wasn't in any pain at all, like she was going to sleep. A couple of times while he talked, Dad's voice got trembly and he cleared his throat. I've never seen Dad cry before, but I saw him cry tonight. I'd gone into Mum and Dad's bedroom looking for Mum to put me to bed, but saw Dad sitting on the edge of the bed, taking off his socks. His back was to the door, so he didn't know I was there. At first I thought he was laughing because his shoulders were shaking, but then he put his palms on his eyes, and I realised he was crying. It was the quietest crying I've ever heard, like a whisper. I was going to go over to him, but then I thought maybe he was whisper crying because he didn't want me or anyone else to hear him. So I walked out and went to Via's room, and I saw Mum lying next to Via on the bed, and Mum was whispering to Via, who was crying. So I went to my bed, and I put on my pyjamas without anyone telling me to, and put the nightlight on, and turned the light off, and crawled into the little mountain of stuffed animals I'd left on my bed earlier. It felt like all had happened a million years ago. I took my hearing aids off and put them on the night table, and pulled the covers up to my ears, and I imagined Daisy snuggling with me, her big wet tongue licking my face all over like it was her favourite face in the world, and that's how I fell asleep. I woke up later on and it was still dark. I got out of bed and walked into Mum and Dad's bedroom. Mummy, I whispered. It was completely dark, so I couldn't see her open her eyes. Mummy. You okay, honey? She said groggily. Can I sleep with you? Mum scooted over towards Daddy's side of the bed, and I snuggled up next to her. She kissed my hair. Is your hand okay? I said. Via told me Daisy bit you. It was only a nip, she whispered in my ear. Mummy. I started crying. I'm sorry about what I said. Shh. There's nothing to be sorry about, she said, so quietly I could barely hear her. She was rubbing the side of her face against my face. Is Via ashamed of me? I said. No, honey, no, you know she's not. She's just adjusting to a new school. It's not easy. I know you know. I'm sorry I called you a liar. Go to sleep, sweet boy. I love you so much. I love you so much too, Mummy. Good night, honey, she said very softly. Mummy, is Daisy with Grand's now? I think so. Are they in heaven? Yes. Do people look the same when they go to heaven? I don't know. I don't think so. Then how do people recognise each other? I don't know, sweetie. She sounded tired. They just feel it. You don't need your eyes to love, right? You just need to feel it inside. That's how it is in heaven. It's just love. and no one forgets who they love. She kissed me again. Now go to sleep, honey, it's late, and I'm so tired. But I couldn't go to sleep, even after I knew she had fallen asleep. I could hear Daddy sleeping too, and I imagined I could hear Via sleeping down the hallway in her room. And I wondered if Daisy was sleeping in heaven right then, and if she was sleeping, was she dreaming about me? And I wondered how it would feel to be in heaven some day, and not have my face matter any more, just like it never, ever mattered to Daisy.